The sun dipped low over the turquoise water, painting the sky in strokes of gold and pink. The waves whispered softly against the sand, and for a moment the world seemed still. It was the kind of evening that made strangers smile at each other, the kind of calm that made people forget the noise of their lives. Malik stood barefoot at the edge of the water, the ocean curling around his ankles. His wife, Tasha, was laughing behind him, holding her phone up to take yet another picture. She was the kind of woman who could make any place feel like home, warm, curious, never missing the beauty in little things. "You're not even smiling, baby," she teased, squinting at her screen. "You look like you're plotting something." He turned, grinning. "Maybe I am. Trying to figure out how I let you talk me into a beach vacation when I don't even like sand." Tasha giggled and jogged over, looping her arm through his. "You like the view though." Malik looked at her, not the horizon, and nodded. "Yeah, I really do." It was their first real vacation in years, a break they'd promised themselves over and over but never took. Between Malik's work and Tasha's business, life had kept them moving, planning, chasing. Now for the first time there were no alarms, no deadlines, no phone calls. Just the two of them in a week of peace. Or so they thought. That night, as the couple walked back toward their rented villa, a black SUV rolled slowly down the street. Inside, four men sat in silence. The one in the passenger seat, a wiry man with a scar along his jawline, pointed toward Malik and Tasha. "Those the ones?" he asked. The driver nodded. "Yeah, tourists. Easy money." They didn't know Malik. They didn't know the quiet in his eyes came from years of training, of watching, of waiting. They didn't know he wasn't just a man on vacation. He was a man who had learned to survive in the world's hardest places. And they were about to make the worst mistake of their lives. Back at the villa, Tasha was humming softly as she unpacked groceries. Malik stood at the window watching the street. Something about the way the SUV had slowed earlier tugged at his attention. He didn't say anything yet. He just watched. Years in special forces had taught him to trust his gut, and right now, it was whispering that something was off. He saw movement in the distance, a group of men hanging around the corner store pretending to chat, but their eyes kept drifting toward the villas. He noted their posture, their spacing, the way one kept checking his phone. His instincts filed every detail away. "Everything okay?" Tasha asked, looking up. "Yeah," he said, forcing a smile. "Just thinking about what we're doing tomorrow. Maybe a boat ride?" Tasha smiled. "Finally, you're getting into vacation mode." But Malik wasn't relaxed. Not anymore. Later that night, the breeze carried faint sounds through the open balcony doors, laughter, distant music, and somewhere underneath it, a rhythm that didn't belong. Footsteps. 2 sets. Light but steady. Malik's eyes opened instantly. He glanced at the clock. 2:37 a.m. Tasha was asleep beside him. He slid quietly out of bed, every movement controlled. The floor creaked once under his heel. He froze, waited, then continued. He didn't reach for a weapon. He didn't need to. Outside, the night was moonlit and still. A figure moved past the gate, whispering to another. Malik recognized the low murmur of planning. He could almost map the angles of their movement without seeing them. Years of night missions had taught him how to read sound like a language. He eased the balcony door shut and stood in the dark, breathing slow. The question wasn't whether they'd come, it was when. By morning, Malik had already checked every lock, every blind spot. When Tasha woke, she noticed his tone was different, focused, quiet. "You didn't sleep," she said softly. "Just jet lag," he replied. They spent the day like normal tourists. Breakfast by the shore, a visit to the local market, pictures with smiling vendors. But Malik never stopped scanning. Reflections in glass windows, shadows that lingered too long, a man pretending to read a newspaper while watching them pass. Tasha, blissfully unaware, kept holding his hand, laughing and pulling him into pictures. "You're getting paranoid again," she teased at one point. He smiled but didn't answer. He didn't want to worry her, not yet. That evening, as the sun dipped again, the same black SUV idled across the street. Inside, the driver tapped his fingers on the wheel. "Tonight," he said. The man with the scar nodded. "Easy job. In and out." Back at the villa, Malik grilled dinner on the patio while Tasha poured wine. The smell of charred vegetables and the sound of the waves made the world seem safe again. For a moment even he let his guard slip. "You know," Tasha said, swirling her glass, "I could get used to this." He smiled. "Me too." Then a car door shut somewhere close. It was subtle but Malik heard it, the soft metallic click in the distance, too close to be random. His eyes flicked toward the shadows beyond the gate. The breeze shifted, carrying with it the faint crunch of shoes on gravel. He put down the tongs. Tasha frowned. "What's wrong?" "Stay here," he said quietly. Before she could reply, he walked toward the edge of the patio. The air was still. The streetlight flickered once, then steadied. The SUV was gone. But Malik knew what that meant. They were already inside the neighborhood. He scanned the alley. Nothing. Just the hum of insects and the far-off sound of a boat engine. Yet every instinct told him the night wasn't empty. He turned back toward the house. Inside, Tasha's phone buzzed on the counter. An unknown number. She frowned and picked it up, expecting maybe a delivery confirmation. But when she answered, the line was silent. Then a whisper came through. "Nice place you've got there." Her hand froze. "Who is this?" Click. The line went dead. She looked toward the window where Malik had been standing. He was gone. Outside, Malik had already moved into the shadows, every sense alive. He didn't know who was watching yet, but he knew one thing. Someone had just crossed a line. And whoever they were, they had no idea what kind of man they were about to meet. Tasha's heart pounded as she stared at her phone, the quiet of the villa suddenly feeling too deep, too still. She looked toward the open patio door where Malik had been standing a few moments ago. "Malik?" she called softly, her voice trembling just a little. No answer. She took a step closer to the door, the wind brushing her hair as the waves rolled faintly in the distance. Somewhere beyond the fence, she thought she heard the crunch of footsteps on gravel, slow, measured, and then gone. She turned back toward the kitchen and grabbed her phone again, debating whether to call the local police, but stopped. Malik had mentioned earlier that he didn't fully trust the security here. He'd said it casually, almost in passing, but there was something about the way he'd said it that stuck with her. She set the phone down again, trusting his instincts more than her fear. Outside, Malik moved silently through the side of the property, crouching low by the bushes near the gate. The night air was warm, thick with salt and the faint scent of tropical flowers. His eyes swept across the narrow road, taking in every movement. A swinging sign from a small store, the flicker of a bulb, and then, the faintest reflection of metal about 30 feet away. A car mirror. The same SUV from earlier, partially hidden behind a wall. He didn't move. Instead he watched. Inside the vehicle the men spoke in low voices. "We wait till lights go out," the driver murmured. "The woman's on the phone. She's nervous. They'll slip up." Malik's jaw tightened. He could hear every word, the cadence of their voices revealing nerves beneath their confidence. He recognized the kind of tone men had when they thought they were in control, right before they lost it. Back inside, Tasha turned off most of the lights, leaving only the soft glow from the living room lamp. She looked out toward the patio again, whispering to herself, "Where are you, Malik?" She wanted to believe he was fine, that maybe he was just checking something, but deep down she knew this wasn't nothing. Malik circled back toward the house and slipped through the side door. "Tasha," he whispered. She spun around in relief. "You scared me. Where were you?" He put a finger to his lips, his expression calm but serious. "We're not alone," he said softly. "There's a car parked near the gate. For men." Her face fell. "What do they want?" "I don't know yet. But I need you to trust me, okay? Whatever happens, do what I say when I say it." Tasha nodded slowly, her eyes wide but steady. "Okay." He gave her hand a small squeeze, a gesture so gentle it contrasted completely with the look in his eyes. It was the same look she'd seen a few years ago when she first learned what he used to do before they met. Back then, he'd told her only small pieces of it. Missions overseas, dangerous places, the kind of work that changed how you saw the world. He'd left that life behind to start fresh, to find peace. But right now she could see that part of him waking up again. Malik walked to the table and grabbed his phone. The screen reflected his calm face as he checked for service. Weak signal. He opened the security app for the villa's rental network and noticed something strange. The cameras on the exterior weren't showing live footage. Just frozen stills from hours earlier. He frowned. "They jammed the feed," he muttered. "Can they do that?" Tasha asked quietly. "Yeah. And it means they've done this before." Tasha's breath hitched. "You think they're professionals?" "Not professionals," he said, shaking his head. "They're organized but sloppy. Small-time crew, maybe local. They pick easy targets, tourists. But they're not ready for what's waiting for them here." Outside, one of the men from the SUV stepped out and adjusted his jacket. He pulled out his phone, typing quickly, glancing up and down the street. Malik saw the faint glow of the screen through the blinds. He knew they were checking whether anyone else was around, making sure the street was quiet before moving. "Malik," Tasha whispered. Shouldn't we call someone? He hesitated. He wanted to, but his instincts told him they wouldn't have time. And worse, if this group had someone watching the area, a call might tip them off. Not yet, he said. Let's make them think we're asleep. Keep the lights low. Stay quiet. They moved through the house, Malik guiding her carefully, checking doors, turning locks, pulling curtains. Every now and then he paused and listened, a habit from years of training when silence told more truth than any word. When they finally sat down on the couch in the dim light, Tasha looked at him closely. You're not scared, are you? She asked softly. He gave a small, almost tired smile. I learned a long time ago that fear doesn't help. Awareness does. Did things like this happen when you were still in the service? He looked at her for a long second, then nodded. Sometimes. Different settings, different stakes. But people are people everywhere. Some see kindness as weakness. They don't understand what it takes to stay calm when the world turns upside down. Tasha nodded slowly, holding his gaze. I'm glad you're here. He didn't answer. He just squeezed her hand again. Outside the air grew still. A stray dog barked in the distance. The hum of the SUV's engine went silent. One of the men whispered, Now? The driver nodded. Inside, Malik stood up. It's starting, he said quietly. He motioned for Tasha to move toward the hallway where it was darker. She followed, her pulse thudding in her ears. Every creak of the wooden floor seemed too loud. Malik stayed near the living room window, eyes sharp, every muscle ready. The gate gave a soft metallic squeak, subtle, almost lost in the wind, but Malik heard it. Stay behind me, he murmured. A figure moved in the yard, shadow merging with shadow. Malik couldn't see faces, just shapes, careful, practiced movement. But something about their rhythm told him they weren't used to being watched. They were used to being the ones watching. He glanced at the small clock on the wall. The second hand ticked slowly, the room stretching into that strange, heavy stillness that happens before something breaks. Tasha clutched his arm. Malik, what if they come inside? He didn't take his eyes off the window. Then we make them wish they hadn't. She wanted to believe he was joking, but his voice was too steady. She'd seen that calm before. Once, years ago, when they were in a car accident and everyone else panicked. Malik hadn't raised his voice then either. He just moved, thought, acted. A shadow passed across the patio door just for a second. Malik saw it. Tasha didn't. He waited. Nothing moved after that, but the feeling didn't fade. Minutes passed. Or maybe it was seconds. Time felt strange, stretched thin by fear and adrenaline. Tasha finally whispered, maybe they left. Malik's expression didn't change. No, he said softly. They're patient. Waiting for the right opening. He stepped quietly to the side window and peeked through the edge of the curtain. The SUV was still there, engine off, lights dimmed. 2 men were inside, their silhouettes faint. The other 2, he couldn't see them. He turned back to Tasha. We'll stay quiet. When I say move, you move. She nodded, her voice barely audible. Okay. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the villa's lights flickered. Once. Twice. And then went dark. Tasha gasped softly. Malik didn't flinch. He just whispered, they cut the power. In the sudden darkness, the sound of the ocean grew louder, the crash of waves filling the silence. Malik reached for Tasha's hand, steadying her. His voice was calm, almost reassuring. They think darkness helps them. They don't know it helps me more. The world outside the windows was a blur of moonlight and shadows. Somewhere, footsteps shifted again. A door hinge creaked in the distance, faint, slow, deliberate. Tasha gripped Malik's hand tighter. What do we do? Malik didn't answer right away. He looked toward the door, then at her, then back toward the window. His eyes were sharp, his breathing slow. Now, he whispered, we wait. And as the seconds dragged into the kind of silence that vibrates in the chest, a new sound broke through, the unmistakable creak of the gate closing again. But this time it wasn't someone entering. It was someone trapping them in. The night held its breath. And for the first time, Tasha realized, whatever was coming, it had already begun. The night pressed down heavier now, the air thick and unmoving. The villa, once cozy and calm, felt like it was holding its breath. The faint hum of the ceiling fan had stopped when the power went out, leaving only the quiet rhythm of the sea outside and the soft rustle of the curtains swaying in the warm wind. Tasha's hand was still in Malik's, her pulse fast beneath his fingers. He could feel the tremor of fear she was trying to hide. He squeezed gently, grounding her without saying a word. Years of training had taught him that silence could be a shield, That panic gave away more than noise ever could. From somewhere near the back gate came the low sound of metal scraping against stone. Malik turned his head slightly. He didn't move toward it, instead he listened. The pattern was steady, too careful to be the wind. Someone was testing the boundary, maybe trying to pry open the latch. He knew their type, cautious but impatient. They wanted control, but they didn't have discipline. He whispered, "Stay low, stay quiet." Tasha crouched near the edge of the sofa, watching him. In the dim glow of the moonlight filtering through the window, she could see how calm he looked. His eyes moved slowly, calculating, scanning the way a hunter watches a forest. She didn't fully understand how someone could be this steady, but she trusted him with everything. Outside, the men whispered to each other. "We cut the power." "They'll be scared," one said, a trace of amusement in his voice. "Just make sure you don't scare the woman too much," another muttered. "We don't need noise." Malik's jaw tightened. He recognized the tone, arrogant, careless. It reminded him of men he'd faced overseas, the ones who underestimated everything until it was too late. He couldn't see their faces, but he didn't need to. Their words told him all he needed to know. Inside the villa, Malik moved toward the hallway, his steps light, controlled. He paused near the kitchen counter, looking around for anything useful. Not a weapon, but something to buy them time. His eyes landed on a small flashlight and a heavy glass vase. He handed the flashlight to Tasha. "If it gets darker, point this at the floor, not the window. Don't let them see the light." She nodded. "Malik, how do you stay so calm?" He looked at her briefly. "Because I've seen worse nights than this." The sound outside shifted, quick footsteps, a faint thud, then silence again. Malik glanced at the front door. The handle twitched. Once, twice. Someone was testing it. The old wooden door rattled quietly in its frame. Tasha's breath caught. Malik motioned for her to move farther back into the hallway. She did, clutching the flashlight like a lifeline. He stayed still by the window, barely breathing. The door handle stopped moving. Then a different noise, a tap near the side window. A distraction. He recognized the tactic. While one person drew attention to the front, another approached from the side. He turned slightly, his eyes narrowing. "They're splitting up," he murmured under his breath. In the SUV, the driver stayed behind, his eyes scanning the street. He kept glancing at his phone, reading a message thread that said, "Make it clean. No mistakes." He didn't like this part of the job. It wasn't supposed to get complicated. Just scare the couple, grab what they could, and disappear. But something about the silence from the villa made him uneasy. He couldn't shake the feeling they were being watched too. Back inside, Tasha's nerves began to fray. The quiet stretched too long. "What if they come in?" she whispered. "They might," Malik said calmly. "But that's their mistake." She frowned. "How can you be so sure?" He looked at her, eyes focused and firm. "Because they think I'm like everyone else." The words hung in the air, heavy and quiet. Another noise, a soft click near the back door. Malik's attention snapped toward it. He motioned for Tasha to move to the far corner of the hallway. She obeyed without question, her breathing shallow. He moved silently through the shadows, every step placed with care. The door handle at the back turned slightly, then stopped. Someone was testing how much it would move before making noise. Malik crouched behind the counter, watching through the reflection of the glass oven door. He could just make out a faint silhouette outside the window, a man's shoulder, the gleam of something metallic in his hand. He didn't react. He just waited. The man outside shifted, whispered something, then moved away. Malik heard the gravel crunch, then silence again. He counted the seconds in his head. 3, 5, 8. Then he stood and went back to Tasha. "They're looking for a weak spot," he said quietly. "They're not rushing. That means they're not scared yet." Tasha looked up at him, her voice barely a whisper. "Can we leave?" He shook his head. "Not yet. If we move now, we'll walk right into them." The ocean outside roared louder for a moment as a strong wind blew through. It rattled the shutters and made the shadows dance across the walls. Malik's mind worked quickly, mapping out possible exits, blind spots, and timing. He knew how to control chaos. The trick was patience. But Tasha's patience was wearing thin. "Why us?" she asked suddenly, her voice shaking. "We didn't do anything. We just came here to rest." Malik looked at her and, for the first time that night, his face softened. "Sometimes bad people don't need a reason," he said. "They see something they want, money, attention, power, and they take it. But they picked the wrong people this time." She nodded, holding back tears. "I trust you." He reached up and brushed a stray hair from her face. "Good. That's all I need. Outside the men regrouped. This place has cameras, one said. But they're not working. Another laughed. Good. Then we go in quiet. 5 minutes, tops. Just don't mess it up, the driver warned. We don't want trouble with locals again. Trouble with locals? Malik caught that phrase through the open crack of a window. He stored it away. It told him this wasn't their first time. They'd probably targeted tourists before, maybe others in nearby villas. That meant there were victims who never even realized who they were dealing with. Inside, the couple sat in silence again, the faint glow of moonlight brushing across their faces. The villa creaked slightly, old wood shifting with the wind. Every sound felt amplified. Malik could almost feel the energy building outside, that moment right before something happens when everything feels suspended. Tasha whispered, "What if they have weapons?" Malik's expression stayed steady. Then they'll depend on them. And people who depend on weapons forget how to think fast. That's when they make mistakes. She looked at him with a mix of fear and admiration. He wasn't arrogant, just sure. Sure in a way that came from experience, not ego. Minutes passed like hours. The street was quiet again, too quiet. The only movement was the slow drift of palm tree shadows against the window. Malik stayed near the hallway entrance, listening. Then faintly, a new sound. A phone buzz. Someone outside answering in a hushed voice. Malik couldn't hear the words, but the tone was tense, hurried. He leaned slightly closer to the window. The man outside whispered, "No, not yet. The husband's up. I saw movement." Malik's lips curved slightly, a trace of irony in his eyes. Good. Keep guessing, he thought. He stepped back toward Tasha. "They're nervous now," he said. "They're realizing this isn't easy." Tasha nodded, whispering, "Does that mean they'll leave?" He looked toward the window again. "Not yet. They're stubborn. They'll try something else." And somewhere out there, the men were indeed planning their next move, unaware that the quiet figure inside, the man they thought was just another tourist, was already several steps ahead of them. The villa sat wrapped in darkness, the sea still whispering just beyond the walls. Every breath, every flicker of light felt like part of a countdown, not to the end but to whatever would happen next. And in that still moment, before anything broke the silence, Tasha realized something new. Malik wasn't just protecting them. He was studying the threat, reading it, waiting for it to show its hand. The real question wasn't if the gang would make their move. It was when. And when they did, nothing would go the way they planned. The minutes stretched into something that felt longer than time itself. The darkness outside seemed to press against the windows, heavy and expectant, as if the whole night were waiting to see what would happen next. The villa was still, lit only by faint moonlight spilling through the curtains. Malik stood near the hallway, unmoving, listening to every shift in the air. Tasha sat quietly in the corner, holding her breath each time a sound echoed from outside. The silence between them was full of meaning. She could see from his face that he was reading the night like a story, every tiny sound another line. His eyes moved slowly, tracking something invisible to her. Then came it, the faint, deliberate crunch of a shoe on gravel. Once, twice, and then again. Closer this time. Tasha's fingers tightened around the flashlight she still hadn't turned on. Malik's body tensed, though his face remained calm. He glanced toward the patio door, and in the dim light, a thin shadow moved across it. "They're coming," he whispered. Her pulse spiked. "What do we do?" "Nothing yet," he said. "Let them show their hand." The air was thick with tension, every creak of the house sounding too loud. Another step outside, then another. The door handle trembled slightly, a soft rattle like the night itself was breathing. Malik's eyes followed the motion, calculating angles, distances, possible reactions. From beyond the fence came the faint hum of the SUV's engine starting again, then stopping. Someone inside the vehicle was watching, waiting for a signal. They thought this was still a game of control. Malik moved to the side, his shadow blending with the dark corner of the room. He motioned for Tasha to move farther back, to the narrow hallway behind the kitchen. She obeyed, though her movements were slow and careful, her every breath shallow. Then a soft tap, metal against glass. The sound was small but sharp, and Tasha flinched. Malik didn't move. The tapping came again, near the kitchen window this time. Someone was checking for weakness, testing how solid the frame was. He looked at Tasha and mouthed the word, "Stay." She nodded, crouching low. A whisper floated through the night from outside, too faint to catch all the words but clear enough to know what it meant. "Backside. Move now." Malik's muscles tightened. "They're splitting again." He could sense the rhythm of their plan. It was messy, uncoordinated, but dangerous enough. They tried 2 entry points at once, hoping to confuse. Inside, the air grew colder as the wind picked up from the ocean. The curtains fluttered slightly, a soft rustle against the rising tension. Malik crouched low, waiting. His eyes tracked movement near the back door. A shadow passed, then paused, then moved again. Tasha could hear her own heartbeat. She wanted to close her eyes, but she couldn't. Something about Malik's stillness kept her anchored. She didn't want to miss what would happen next. Then, out of nowhere, a loud thud came from the front porch. Tasha gasped, covering her mouth. Malik didn't flinch. He whispered, "Distraction." At the same time, the sound of a latch shifting at the back door reached his ears. That was it. The real move. He stood slowly, stepping into the faint slice of moonlight near the hallway. His eyes didn't waver. Tasha saw something change in him. His posture, the way he breathed, even the set of his shoulders. The calm had sharpened into something focused, almost electric. Outside, the back gate gave a soft squeak as it opened. 2 shadows slipped in, moving quickly along the wall toward the door. The front porch went silent again, but Malik could sense another figure there too. 3 men now, one still in the SUV. The back door handle turned slowly. Malik could hear the faint scrape of metal, the soft push of weight against the frame. He knew the sound of patience pretending to be skill. Tasha's eyes widened. She mouthed his name, but he shook his head. Not yet. The door handle stopped turning, then came the faint sound of a whisper outside, "Now." The door creaked open an inch before Malik moved. He stepped forward, calm, precise, his presence sudden enough to make the shadow outside freeze. The faint outline of a man appeared in the doorway, just a silhouette against the silver light. Neither spoke. The silence between them felt like a held breath. Inside the SUV, the driver tapped his fingers nervously on the steering wheel. "Why's it taking so long?" he muttered. He looked toward the villa but could barely make out shapes through the darkness. They should be out by now. Back inside, Tasha crouched lower in the hallway trying to stay quiet, though her body was trembling. She could hear faint movement, feet shifting, the soft sound of the door bumping the frame. Then silence again. Malik stepped sideways, blending into the deeper shadow near the corner of the room. The man outside whispered something, his tone frustrated. Then he pushed the door open wider. Malik waited until the hinge gave its soft groan, timing it perfectly, before shifting his weight. The sound covered his movement as he stepped silently to a better angle. Tasha watched through the faint slit of light between the kitchen and the hallway. She could just make out Malik's shape now, motionless, while the figure outside hesitated. Another whisper came from outside, closer to the front. "You see anything?" "Nothing yet," the man near the back muttered. "Lights are out. I think they're gone." "Then check." Malik's eyes didn't leave the open doorway. He could almost feel the other man's pulse from the hesitation alone. It was the kind of pause that happens when confidence begins to fade. He glanced toward the hallway once, his eyes meeting Tasha's. She didn't move, but in that one look she understood what he was telling her. Stay calm, stay quiet. Then a new sound cut through the night. A distant car door slammed down the street. It wasn't related to them, just someone coming home late. But the sudden noise jolted the man outside. He shifted quickly, his shoe scraping against the tile as he stepped inside. Tasha covered her mouth. Malik took a single, controlled breath. Every part of him was alert, reading the man's rhythm, his height, the way his footsteps landed unevenly. The man took 2 more steps inside, scanning with a small flashlight. The narrow beam moved across the living room, pausing near the wall. Malik's shadow stayed perfectly still. The man muttered under his breath, "Nothing here." "Maybe." A voice hissed from the front, sharp and low. "Hurry up." The man froze, the light jerking for just a second. Malik didn't move, but Tasha could see the tension in his frame building like a storm. Outside, the SUV's engine turned over again, the headlights briefly flickering before being shut off. The driver cursed softly. "Come on, just finish it," he muttered. The man inside took one last step into the room, the floorboard creaking softly beneath his boot. That tiny sound echoed louder than anything else in the house. Malik's eyes narrowed slightly. He knew that creak, it was the one board he'd stepped over earlier that evening. He'd been waiting for that exact sound. Tasha didn't understand how he could be this calm. Every part of her wanted to scream, to run, to do something. But something about the look on his face stopped her. He was waiting for one thing, the right moment. The silence thickened again. Even the ocean seemed to quiet as if it too was watching. Then came a low voice from outside, almost annoyed. You said 5 minutes. The man in the doorway exhaled, whispering back, I'm checking. Just wait. But Malik wasn't waiting anymore. The tension had reached its peak, the air electric with everything unspoken. He moved his weight slowly, almost soundless, positioning himself between the hallway and the main room. Every step was deliberate, every breath measured. The moonlight caught the edge of his face for a brief second, outlining his calm expression. In that moment, the entire house seemed to hold still. Tasha didn't move. She didn't blink. The figure inside the room took another uncertain step forward, and Malik's shadow shifted slightly, barely visible but powerful in its stillness. Whatever was going to happen next, whatever collision of plans and instincts was about to unfold, it was already in motion. And somewhere, deep inside the darkness, the man who thought he was in control was about to learn that he wasn't. The night was holding its breath. The moment before everything broke had finally arrived. The stillness broke with a sound so small it might have gone unnoticed, the faint buzz of a phone vibrating somewhere outside. The man inside froze, his flashlight beam trembling slightly. Malik's eyes flicked toward the sound, then back to the intruder. It was a moment no longer than a heartbeat, but in that sliver of time, everything shifted. The phone stopped buzzing. Then came a voice, faint, distant, urgent. Get out. Now. The man turned toward the doorway, confusion flashing across his face. Malik saw it clearly even in the half-light, hesitation. He knew that look. It wasn't fear, not yet. It was doubt. Doubt always came right before things fell apart. Outside, another voice answered sharply. No. He's still in there. Finish it. The words hung heavy in the air. Malik could feel it, something was off. The voices didn't sound united anymore. There was tension between them, cracks forming in their plan. And cracks meant weakness. Tasha could feel the air changing too. She didn't know what was happening outside, but she could sense the energy in Malik's stance, sharper now, focused on something new. He wasn't just waiting for the man in the house anymore. He was listening beyond the walls, reading something invisible to her. Then from outside came the sudden roar of an engine. The SUV's headlights flared to life, bright and blinding, washing across the villa's front windows for a brief second before the lights cut out again. The sound of tires spinning on gravel echoed down the road. They're leaving? Tasha whispered, hope flickering in her voice. But Malik didn't look relieved. His expression darkened instead. No, he said quietly. Someone else just showed up. She frowned, whispering, what do you mean? He tilted his head slightly, listening. Beyond the receding engine noise, a new sound grew, the low rumble of another vehicle approaching. It wasn't a small car. The engine was deeper, slower, confident. The kind that didn't rush or hide. Tasha's stomach tightened. Who is that? I don't know, Malik said, his voice low. But whoever it is, they're not with the others. The man in the villa hesitated, glancing toward the back door as if he'd heard it too. Hey, he whispered into the small radio clipped to his shirt, we've got company. Who's coming up the road? Static. Then a harsh whisper, nobody. Stay put. But the rumble grew louder. Headlights flashed again through the cracks of the fence, this time from a different angle, sweeping slowly across the yard. The man inside cursed under his breath, stepping back toward the shadows. Malik didn't move. He knew confusion when he saw it. Then the new car stopped. Doors opened, 1, 2, maybe 3 of them. Footsteps. Heavy, measured. Malik's instincts told him something else entirely was in play now. This wasn't just a robbery gone wrong anymore. Someone else had been watching, waiting for the same moment the gang had chosen to strike. Tasha's voice trembled. Malik, who are they? I don't know, he said, eyes fixed on the window. But this is bigger than we thought. The man inside finally broke his silence, his voice sharp, nervous. What's happening? Malik didn't answer. He didn't have to. Outside, the tone of the night had shifted again, the kind of shift that only comes when something unpredictable enters the equation. A deep voice echoed from beyond the fence. You boys picked the wrong house. The man inside stiffened. That's not our guy, he whispered into his radio, panic creeping in now. Static answered him. The line was dead. Tasha's heart hammered. Malik. Stay down, he said quietly, his gaze never leaving the window. From outside came the sound of shuffling feet, then a scuffle, low, muffled voices arguing in the dark. Malik couldn't see much, but the tone was enough. The newcomers weren't here to help. They were claiming the same ground. He pieced it together quickly. The gang had planned this for days, but they weren't the only ones watching the villa. Someone else, maybe another crew, maybe someone local, had seen the opportunity too. And now both sides had shown up at the same time. Tasha whispered, "This is bad, isn't it?" Malik nodded slowly. "Yeah. And they don't even know about each other yet." A harsh shout rang out from outside. "Who are you?" "Could ask you the same thing," another voice shot back. A moment of silence followed, tense, taut, ready to snap. Then, suddenly, the sound of something breaking. A yell. More movement. Inside the villa, Malik's pulse stayed steady. The situation was escalating, but it gave him something useful: chaos. Chaos was predictable in its own way. When everyone else lost control, that's when he found it. The man who'd broken into the house backed toward the door now, his flashlight beam shaking as he pointed it toward the noise outside. He was breathing faster, muttering to himself. This wasn't part of the plan. Tasha could see him now, the edge of his jacket, the nervous twitch of his hands. Malik's shadow remained still, unreadable. Then another sound joined the mix, the distinct tone of police sirens, faint but unmistakable, somewhere far off in the distance. Whoever had called them, it wasn't Malik or Tasha. Maybe a neighbor had noticed something. Maybe the chaos outside had drawn attention. The man in the villa cursed softly. "We have to go," he hissed into his dead radio. Malik stepped slightly forward, just enough for his voice to carry. "I think you should," he said calmly. The man froze, his head jerking toward the sound. For the first time he realized he wasn't alone inside. He hadn't even seen Malik move. Outside, another yell, "They're inside." The intruder looked toward the back door, torn between fear of what was outside and confusion about who stood quietly inside the shadows. Malik took one slow step closer. "If you walk out that door right now," he said evenly, "you might get a chance to leave this place alive. If you stay," he didn't finish the sentence. "You didn't have to." The man swallowed hard. "Who are you?" Malik's eyes were calm, unreadable. "Just someone on vacation." The word sent a chill down the man's spine. He stumbled back, breathing unevenly, then darted out the door into the dark. Tasha exhaled shakily, her voice barely above a whisper. "What's happening out there?" Malik looked toward the window again. "They're about to find out about each other," he said softly. "And when they do, it's going to get messy." The night outside had become a blur of noise, voices shouting, tires skidding, the flicker of headlights bouncing off the villa's white walls. The second group had closed in, and now the gang that had started all this was caught off guard. Malik's mind worked fast. The longer they stayed, the more dangerous it became. But if they tried to leave now, they'd walk straight into the chaos. Tasha whispered, "What do we do?" He turned to her, his face serious but steady. "We wait for the right opening." "Not yet, almost." The shouts outside grew louder, closer. Someone screamed a name. Another answered with a threat. The tension in the air was thick enough to feel like static before a storm. Malik took a slow breath, his eyes scanning every angle, every flicker of shadow. He'd been in moments like this before, where one wrong move could set off something far bigger than anyone expected. Tasha clutched the flashlight, whispering, "How can you stay so calm?" He looked at her, a faint, almost reassuring smile crossing his face. "Because I've already seen how it ends when people lose their calm." Outside, a sudden crash shattered the stillness. A figure fell against the villa's side wall, another shouting for backup. The conflict had reached its breaking point, and Malik knew that in just a few more seconds, everything around them would change. The question now wasn't who would win. It was who would survive the night once all sides realized what they were really walking into. And as the noise outside grew into a storm of confusion, Malik's eyes narrowed slightly. Somewhere in all that chaos, he sensed something he hadn't before, not just danger but intent. Someone out there wasn't part of either group. Someone else was moving through the dark with a purpose entirely their own. The stakes had just risen. And for the first time that night, Malik knew that the real threat hadn't even revealed itself yet. The chaos outside had reached its peak. Voices shouted over each other, engines revved, and the sound of heavy footsteps echoed around the villa. Tasha could see the faint flicker of movement through the curtains, shadows against shadows. Malik stood still near the corner, his eyes sharp, tracking everything. He wasn't looking at just one threat anymore. There were too many moving pieces now. The first gang was trapped between the villa and the new arrivals. The second group, whoever they were, had come prepared. Their movements were too organized, too sure. Malik could tell they weren't just locals looking for trouble. They were professionals, but not the kind that followed orders from anyone nearby. Tasha whispered, "Malik, they're fighting each other, right?" He nodded slightly. "For now." "Then we can leave?" He shook his head. "Not yet. Someone's missing from this puzzle. The sound of glass breaking made Tasha flinch. A voice outside yelled in anger, followed by the sharp slam of a car door. Malik moved closer to the window, peeking out just enough to see. One of the gang members from earlier was running toward the SUV, shouting something desperate. Behind him, two of the new men followed slowly, weapons lowered but ready. But then Malik saw it, a third figure moving behind them, not part of either group. This one stayed low, slipping between shadows, watching both sides. Every step was deliberate. He wasn't trying to escape. He was waiting. Malik's pulse quickened. "There it is," he murmured. Tasha frowned. "What?" "The one pulling the strings," he said quietly. "The reason both sides are here." The mysterious figure stopped near the fence, pulling something from his jacket, a small device with a faint blinking light. Malik's eyes narrowed. "He's not here for money," he said under his breath. "He's here to erase everything." Tasha's heart skipped. "What do you mean?" He turned toward her, voice calm but urgent. "We have to move. Now." She didn't ask questions. She trusted his tone more than his words. Together they slipped through the back hallway, keeping low. Outside, the shouting was getting louder again, but it was scattered now, confused. Malik opened the side door carefully, scanning the yard before motioning her forward. The wind off the ocean felt cold against their faces. Tasha's hands trembled, but she followed close behind. Malik led her toward a narrow path that curved behind the villa, a route he'd memorized earlier. Then just as they reached the gate, a voice called from behind them. "Going somewhere?" They turned. Standing by the corner of the villa was the same man Malik had seen near the fence, the one with the blinking device. His face was calm, almost casual, as if none of the chaos around them mattered. Malik stepped forward slightly, putting himself between the man and Tasha. "You planned this," he said evenly. "You used both groups." The man smiled faintly. "Not used. Hired. Different purposes, same outcome." Tasha's voice trembled. "Why us? What did we do?" The man's gaze flicked toward her. "Nothing personal. Wrong place, wrong time. Your villa just happened to sit on something valuable." Malik's eyes narrowed. "You mean the land?" "More than that," the man said. "A drop point. Hidden data. People would pay a lot to make sure it disappears, or changes hands quietly." "So, you brought chaos to cover your cleanup," Malik said, his tone flat. The man tilted his head slightly. "Exactly. And it's almost over. You two just need to stay quiet until it is." He raised a small device in his hand. The blinking light turned steady. Malik's jaw tightened. He recognized the pattern, a remote detonator. Nothing big, but enough to erase evidence, destroy traces. It wasn't about destruction for damage. It was about erasing proof. "Put it down," Malik said. The man smirked. "You think I won't?" Malik's voice dropped, calm and steady. "I think you already know I've been watching you since you arrived. And I think you know what happens when someone like me says, 'Put it down.'" Something flickered in the man's eyes, the first sign of doubt. "Who are you?" Malik took a slow step forward. "The man you should have researched before you picked this villa." Tasha could feel the tension in the air like static. The night seemed to hold its breath again. Then, from behind the stranger, movement, one of the gang members stumbling from the fight, dazed, confused, his flashlight beam sweeping wildly. It caught the blinking device in the man's hand. "What is that?" the gang member shouted, raising his voice just as panic hit his eyes. The stranger cursed, spinning toward the sound. Malik seized that instant, the distraction he'd been waiting for. He moved fast, faster than Tasha could follow. A blur of motion, a sharp twist, and the device flew from the man's hand, skidding across the dirt. Tasha ran forward, kicking it away instinctively. It hit a rock and stopped near the fence. The man turned toward her, his calm finally cracking into anger. But Malik was already there, his hand on the man's shoulder, pushing him down before he could react. The distant sirens were closer now, louder, cutting through the night like warning bells. The man glared up at him. "You think this changes anything?" Malik's expression didn't shift. "No," he said quietly. "It just makes sure you don't get to decide how it ends." He stood, pulling Tasha up beside him. The sirens were almost at the gate now. Lights flashed down the road, blue and red washing over the villa's white walls. The chaos outside broke apart quickly. The two remaining groups scattered into the dark, leaving behind their wrecked vehicles and confusion. By the time the first patrol car arrived, the villa looked like a storm had passed through. Tasha stood beside Malik as the officers moved in, questioning, searching. She didn't say much, her body still shaking from adrenaline. One of the officers approached Malik, nodding toward the restrained man near the fence. "We got your call," he said. "Didn't realize it was this kind of situation." Malik gave a small nod. "It got complicated." The officer frowned. "You said you were a tourist." Malik smiled faintly. "I am." The officer hesitated, then nodded slowly as if deciding not to ask any more questions. Tasha looked at Malik, her voice quiet. "You called them?" He nodded once. "A few minutes ago. I figured they'd take longer, but looks like someone else tipped them too." She frowned. "Someone else?" Malik's eyes drifted toward the villa, where a figure stood just beyond the gate, a woman in plain clothes watching quietly. When she noticed him looking, she gave a slight nod before walking away into the darkness. Tasha followed his gaze. "Who was that?" He exhaled slowly. "Old friend. Or maybe someone making sure the right people knew where to look." Tasha looked down, still trying to process everything. "You never said what you did before." He glanced at her with a small smile. "You never asked." She laughed softly, shaking her head. "I didn't think I needed to." They stood there for a moment, letting the noise of the scene fade into the background. The night breeze carried the smell of salt and smoke, the sound of waves returning after all the chaos. As the officers began clearing the scene, Malik picked up the small device the man had dropped earlier. Its light was off now, harmless. But when he turned it over in his hand, something caught his attention. A second transmitter hidden beneath the casing, still active, blinking faintly. Tasha saw his expression change. "What is it?" He looked up toward the road, his eyes narrowing. This wasn't the only one. Before she could ask more, another explosion of light flashed far down the beach. Not an explosion but a sudden flare, bright and sharp, signaling something. Malik's jaw tightened. The real cleanup wasn't over. Someone else had taken the plan. He stopped and moved it somewhere else. He turned toward Tasha, voice steady again. "Let's go. It's not finished yet." And as they walked toward the road, the night behind them faded back into stillness. The villa quiet once more, but the distant light on the horizon kept flashing, reminding them both that what happened tonight was only the beginning of something much larger. The story hadn't ended. It had just revealed the next layer hidden beneath it all. Malik and Tasha walked down the narrow path behind the villa, the distant flare still glowing faintly on the horizon. The adrenaline from the night's chaos was beginning to fade, replaced by exhaustion and a quiet sense of relief. Every shadow along the path made Tasha jump slightly, but Malik stayed calm, guiding her carefully. His hand was steady on her shoulder, a silent promise that she was safe as long as she stayed close. The villa behind them was quiet now, the faint smell of smoke and salt carried on the ocean breeze. Malik glanced back once, noting the damage, broken fence panels, scuff marks near the doors, and the evidence of the struggle outside. It was a mess but nothing irreparable. It would take time to rebuild, but for the first time that night, he allowed himself a small, private sense of satisfaction. They had survived. Tasha's voice broke the silence. "Malik, did we really stop them all?" He shook his head gently. "Most of them. The two gangs scattered, and the one man with the device is in police custody. But not everything we saw tonight was random. Someone else is out there, someone smarter, more organized. The flare you saw? That's a message. Or a warning. Someone's cleaning up what they couldn't finish." She frowned. "So, it's not over?" He gave a small smile. "For us it is. We survived. That's the important part." They reached the main road where a few police cars were still parked. Officers were speaking quietly, taking notes, securing the scene. One of the officers approached them, nodding at Malik. "We got statements from witnesses and recovered the devices. You both did well staying calm and out of the way." Tasha exhaled deeply. "Thank you. I don't even know how we managed it." Malik squeezed her hand gently. "Trust helps more than fear." As they walked past the police cars, Tasha glanced back at the villa. She could still see the shadows of broken glass and scattered footprints illuminated faintly by the streetlights. The thought of what could have happened earlier made her shiver, but there was also a sense of accomplishment. They had survived something most people never even imagine. Once they were a safe distance from the scene, Malik stopped and turned to her. "You know," he said quietly, "people think vacations are about escaping danger. But sometimes surviving it is what makes them truly memorable." Tasha laughed softly, shaking her head. "I don't think I'll ever look at a vacation the same way again." He smiled, pulling her close. "And that's okay. Life isn't always about comfort. It's about being ready when things go wrong, even when you least expect it." The distant lights of the police cars faded behind them as they continued walking toward the small hotel where they had stayed before the villa. The night air was calmer now, the chaos of the last few hours giving way to the steady rhythm of waves crashing along the shore. Tasha took a deep breath. I keep thinking about the second group, the ones who showed up after the gangs. Who were they really? Malik's eyes were distant for a moment. Probably people connected to the operation that started all this. Whoever they are, they weren't our problem tonight. We survived because we stayed alert and worked together. That's what matters. She nodded slowly. I didn't realize how much danger there could be in a place that feels so safe. Safe is a feeling, not a guarantee, Malik said softly. But it doesn't mean you have to live in fear. You just have to be prepared. You have to pay attention to what's real and what you can control. Tasha's hand found his again, gripping it firmly. I'm glad you were here. I don't think I could have done it without you. He gave her a small smile, a mix of relief and pride. You were braver than you think. You followed instructions, stayed calm, and trusted me. That's what made the difference. As they reached the hotel, Malik looked at the faint lights coming from the lobby. The staff were still awake, checking on late arrivals. It felt mundane after the intensity of the night, a reminder of normal life continuing even after chaos. Tasha exhaled, letting herself relax for the first time. I can't believe we're actually okay. We are, Malik said. And we will be. But tonight teaches you something, doesn't it? She tilted her head. That you never really know when danger is coming? Partly, he said with a small smile. But mostly, that the people you trust, the ones you love, can make all the difference when the unexpected happens. You don't have to face it alone. They checked in at the hotel and took the elevator up to their room. Tasha leaned against the wall, letting the events of the night wash over her. The fear, the adrenaline, the unknown, it was all still there, lingering like a shadow. But it was balanced by relief, gratitude, and a deeper appreciation for the quiet moments of life. Malik unpacked their bags, moving with casual efficiency. We'll clean up tomorrow, he said, but tonight we just breathe. Tasha walked to the window, looking out over the calm ocean. The water sparkled faintly in the moonlight, as if nothing had happened. She whispered softly, I guess life goes on even after nights like this. Malik joined her, standing close. It does. And we go on with it. We don't let fear define us. We let what we've learned make us stronger. Tasha leaned into him. I guess that's true. I'll never forget tonight, though. You won't have to, he said, because we made it through together. And that's something that sticks. For a long moment they stood in silence, listening to the steady rhythm of the waves. The villa behind them, the gangs, the mysterious third party, it was all behind them now. For this night at least they had control, safety, and each other. Then Malik glanced down at the small device he had picked up earlier, the one that had caused so much chaos. He turned it over in his hand. Everything seemed to be deactivated now, harmless. He set it on the bedside table. Tasha noticed him staring at it. You still thinking about it? She asked. He nodded slowly. It's a reminder. Not everything is finished just because the danger is gone. There's always someone somewhere watching, waiting. But it doesn't mean we can't live our lives. She smiled softly. We survived it all. That counts for something. Malik nodded, taking her hand again. It counts for everything. And that's the lesson. Pay attention, stay alert, trust the right people, and don't let fear take over. That's how you survive. That's how you win your life back. The two of them sat by the window for a while longer, watching the moonlight reflect on the ocean. The night air was calm, the sounds of the distant city faint. For the first time since the chaos began, Tasha felt peace. Malik's gaze lingered on the horizon, as if anticipating the next challenge. Then he looked back at her, smiling. Tomorrow we start fresh, he said. No distractions. Just us. And the beach. Tasha leaned her head on his shoulder. I like that plan. They stayed like that for a while, letting the events of the night settle into memory, knowing they had survived a nightmare that could have ended differently. And as they finally prepared to sleep, the world outside felt bigger, wilder, and yet safer than ever before, because they had faced it together. And in that quiet, Tasha realized something important. Life could be unpredictable, dangerous, and terrifying. But it could also be survived, even thrived in, with trust, courage, and someone you could rely on. The villa would need repairs, the gangs would scatter, the third party might come back. But for now they had won the night, and that was enough. The night's terror had passed, leaving them with clarity, strength, and a renewed sense of life. As Malik turned off the light and the room fell into quiet darkness, Tasha whispered, "Thank you, for everything." He smiled softly, brushing her hair from her face. "We survived together. That's all the thanks we need." Outside, the waves continued their steady rhythm, carrying the last remnants of the night's chaos into the distance, leaving only calm and the promise of tomorrow. And with that, the story finally ended, not with fear but with survival, resilience, and the quiet knowledge that together they could face whatever came next.